Good evening to you all. We've been so happy to be here this week, I guess. It's Monday. Mm-hmm. Time sort of gets weird here. It's nice. My name's Julian. This is my beautiful wife and co-producer of No No Boy, Amelia Halverson Saporiti, which is also my name. Yeah. That's recent. Getting used to that. It works so. So Amelia is not Italian at all. I am Italian a little bit, but she has embraced the last name.
Now I sound very Italian. Amelia Saporiti.
So the first minute is always the part I hate about this concert because I have to let you know that you've been tricked into hearing my dissertation this evening. This is literally my dissertation. I studied all these Asian American histories of immigrants and refugees coming across the Pacific. And when it came time to share it with people, I thought, wow, well, you know, I had spent 10 years of my life being a professional musician. It seems like more than just the 3 people on my committee should hear these incredible stories. So I wrote them into folk songs, and that's what you are hearing this evening. So I'll tell some stories, we'll sing some songs, we'll do one short set, and then we'll do an intermission, and then going to come back to a couple more songs, and then we're very lucky to have one of my colleagues who did his PhD with me at Brown State University in Providence, Rhode Island. My friend Diego is here, and he does some of the most exciting and path-breaking research on Asian American history, and we're going to have a little bit of a conversation and share some of our works, travels, research together, and then open it to a Q&A. So this is a 2-segment deal, which means you have a way out. But we can't thank you enough for having us in 20 Summers, Alice and Cecilia and Aziz and everybody for helping put on this show. And we're really happy to be here. And yeah, we'll get to some music. So this is a mess of songs that travels all around the United States, over to the continent of Asia, to Europe. It traces all these paths of empire and movements of people across time. You know, this is just a small selection we'll do tonight of songs that come from stories that really interested me during my time as an academic. And this first one, though, is very personal. A lot of times when I teach or do one of these concerts, I say, if you appreciate learning some of these new histories that I might tell you, that's wonderful. But the content isn't really why I'm here. It's more of a method. It's a question of method. And really it comes down to, if you're going to spend all this time researching something, learning some history, find a way to share it with people. And also ask your grandmother, because a lot of the impetus of this project is that there was a language barrier and age, time, distance that got in the way of me ever asking these questions that I finally had of my grandmother. So please record that story, or if you are a grandmother, grandfather, grandperson, relay your story, because years give you a lot, and if you don't pass those on, we forget them, and then things happen over and over again. So this song is called Saint Denis, named after the town where my grandmother lived with nuns at the end of her life, and it goes back and forth between there and where I was born, in a strange land called Nashville, Tennessee. The soft language barrier, the child of an immigrant. Before the banh mi trucks were cool, lunch table embarrassment. That scene with the border guard last night on a continent. Say, what was the view like, knowing that you might never come back again? There are so many things I should have asked you then. Sometimes family trees cut cruel. What did you make of Tennessee? In 1988, all covered in snow, winter my little brother was born, and we carried him up the hill to our home. I wish I had taken French a little more seriously, but I remember singing to you when you were dying in Saint Denis. There are so many things I should have asked you then.
So many things.
Sometimes songs don't get a nice end. No, no, no. I'm going to bring my friend Michelle to the stage, please. That one receives applause like half the time. It's supposed to end very sad, and then it's like, oh no, what kind of concert is this? This is a little bit more upbeat song. Well, the subject matter is not upbeat. So, actually all four of us, Diego over there, and then Michelle, this is Michelle, myself, and Amelia were all at Brown. That's where we met. As a grad student, I had to teach one class, and it was called No No Boy, which is also the name of this project, which is named after a book that you should read. The whole point was just, again, it was just method. Just, hey, we're going to learn about these histories, but I'm going to sing a lot of songs to you, and I want you to do anything but write a paper. That was the goal. Couldn't write a paper. Maybe if you were like a journalism major or something, you could write, but not an academic paper. I don't want to read sophomore's academic paper. I don't want to read a grad student's academic paper, to be honest with you. And so, again, it's that whole thing, like, if you have something to say, if you have something really cool, share it, because no undergraduate at the end of the semester, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, ever went to the bar and saddled up next to their buddy and is like, hey, read this 15-page research paper I just crushed this semester. I think you're going to love it. Take it home over the weekend, just sit with it. But if you get your students to make a little documentary or like a podcast or a song or a painting or something like that, then I see the interaction, right? And I see those histories being shared. This song came to me in that class. I'm Vietnamese American, but I knew very little about the peoples and the countries right next to where my mom grew up. That's to say Laos, the Hmong folks, Cambodia, all these Southeast Asian folks who were as affected by the war as my mom was and her folks. And there were these two Cambodian American girls in the class I was teaching, Nicolina and Madhavan. And I remember one day coming into class late, and Nicolina was talking to Madhavan and saying, yeah, I was talking to Dad last night, and I was speaking my best Khmerican. And I didn't know what that meant. Here I was teaching the Asian American Studies class. And so I wrote it down because I always write down cool song lyrics, nice consonants and stuff. And I said, hey, what is Khmerica? What's Khmerican mean? And they looked at me like I'm an idiot. They're like, like Khmer, Khmer, that's like our language, our culture. It's like Spanglish. I was like, oh, okay, I should have known that. And they go, yeah. And I said, that would be a great song title. And they said, yeah, you should write it. They're very sassy. So the semester goes along, totally forget about this, and then like towards the end of the semester, they sort of corner me in the hallway. And it's funny because they're like both 5 feet tall. They're looking up at me, and they say, hey, have you written Khmerica yet? And I said, no, I haven't. Have you done your final yet? And so we struck a deal. But I said, I need something to write about. You got to give me something to write about, right? Because I'm not Cambodian. I don't know this culture as like most Americans don't. Even though these people went through one of the worst genocides in the history of the world, even though the American war in Southeast Asia affected them just as bad as it affected my people, I still didn't know anything because I wasn't taught this stuff. So please teach me. So Nicolina gave me this great gift of all of these paintings, these digital files of paintings that her father had done, who is a Cambodian refugee. And also gave me this 30-minute phone call that she was using as her primary source to make something for her final project. Something I related to deeply. One, because my mom is a Southeast Asian refugee painter. Small demographic there, I guess. But then also because it was just, this conversation was filled with these impossible questions of a child asking a parent who had fled something, left something behind that they don't want to burden their kid with, but we want to know about because we feel like there's something missing, you know? And there's no great answers in that conversation because it's a very difficult one, and it's just hard to go back to for those folks. But there's something in the trying. There's a success in the trying, and it was really inspirational to me. And you know, he told about having to move because bombs were being dropped on his village and horrible shit like that, surviving the Khmer Rouge where a quarter of the population was killed when that regime took over. But he also told a story about a cow named Horse. In the middle of all this. That's what he remembered, right? And it's like my mother. She doesn't fixate on the bombs that went off in the cafes in Saigon when she was coming from home from school or the family members she lost. She remembers being a girl in life, in a teenage life, and that kind of stuff. And we're so much more complex than these flattening terms like immigrant and refugee that people put upon us. So I sat with that conversation over and over. Stories of bombs, stories of cows named Horse, and I also just kept looking at this man's paintings. And it wasn't trauma, it wasn't war, it was just the Angkor Wat Temple, the symbol of that country, painted over and over at the most beautiful time of day, at sunset or sunrise. And so this is Comerica. Some nights I'm a tourist to my kind. Landscape caught within a frame, a glimpse of another side. Call you in my best Comerican. Painter, pick up your round brush and fill the details in. Be my eyes. Be my eyes. Cracked paint, a place enchanted, the colors of your life. Sunsets playing on the temple, and you who survived. Be my eyes. Be my eyes. Some kids move because their parents take new jobs. Some kids move because of napalm. Cracked paint, a place enchanted, the colors, oh the colors of your life. Sea emery bathed in gold and umber, and palm trees climb so high. Sunsets playing on the temple, and you who survive. Be my eyes, Father, oh, be my eyes. Be my eyes, Father, oh, be my eyes. Be my eyes, Father, oh, be my eyes. I can play the old music, we can dance to all the old songs, but I'll never walk with you through it. What a cruel, cruel task to belong. Yeah, you said the moon ain't sitting right when you wanted to marry Mom.
Be my eyes, Father, oh, be my eyes. Be my eyes, Father, oh, be my eyes. Be my eyes, Father, oh,
Thank you. So I was really did one of the people who interviewed me come tonight? Oh yeah. The writers, the TV person. That was cool. Yeah, the writers. No, well they did a great job. There's a couple articles. It was really neat. I was walking around yesterday, and then we found these newspapers, and there was my picture twice. I felt famous. It was great. It's a nice feeling. PhDs don't get that very often. Well, scientists do maybe, but not us humanities people. But this next song, it was something that came up in that interview. It's like the writers were asking, like, what's the point of singing your dissertation instead of writing it? Because it's not to get a job. It doesn't fly in the job market, I can tell you that. Yeah, you can have that proof of concept, but like you can say like I write songs to reach people, but if your songs suck, they don't reach people. But this next one we're gonna play is like reached so many people. I was like Amelia like bothered me one day and was like, hey, there's like 1 million plays on this song. I was like, fuck, that's a lot of plays, especially for like something that was your dissertation, right? And that's the thing, like, when I was a kid, like, I just pored over liner notes. I didn't read a book in high school. I didn't finish a book in high school, I promise you, because I just listened to records, and I just watched movies, and I learned so much through that education, because, like, no teachers really, like, got to me. They didn't really inspire me when I was in high school. I waited till I was older, maybe old enough to learn, perhaps. But, like, if 1% of 1 million people, like, actually sit down and pore over the lyrics of a song, they're going to learn an interesting story, right? The way that I pored over Radiohead songs or, like, whatever I was listening to on rock radio as a kid in the 90s. And I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, like, if they pour over this next song, a song called Imperial Twist, they're going to know that I went one year, a few years back, I went to Paris, which is a city in France. I went there, and my mom said, hey, go meet my old high school friend Robert. He actually knows who you are because he found your indie rock band from when you were a kid, like in the Paris library, and that's actually how my mom and him reconnected over Facebook because of that album. And she was like, he'll cook for you because he's a restaurateur. And I thought, all right, I will go see Robert. But coming from Nashville, Tennessee, right, the very few Vietnamese restaurants there were when I was a kid, they were all in strip malls. So it was like, $10 for the best soup you'll ever have in your life, in and out. So I kind of show up in this American tourist outfit, this tank top. My arms looked better back then, so I was wearing tank tops. Shorts and flip-flops. My mom would be so disgraced. She's Vietnamese, but she's very Parisian. So I go to Robert's restaurant, and it turns out he owns the nicest Vietnamese restaurant in Paris, which again is a city of France and a very fancy city at that. It's a very fancy restaurant, white tablecloths, nothing like I've ever seen a Vietnamese person ever have. And he just like is so generous and loving and wonderful. He's like just talks to me about like my band that I used to be in, and he was like a big fan, and it was awesome. And like over 7 courses, I realized, Robert, I'm here to learn about my mom's upbringing, right? You go into high school they went to Marie Curie High School in Saigon, and it's like, what was that like, man? Like I want to know. It's so hard to talk to your parents directly, about that stuff. So it's like this was a way in. What was it like to be a kid during a war? It's like, God, I'm so glad I don't know what that's like, but I also want to know what that's like. And so he tells me, well, I was actually in a band too. Oh, that's interesting. He's like, I was in a band, but, it wasn't a touring band like yours or anything. It was just some high school kids that got together because, when the Americans came over and they occupied the country, they wanted rock and roll to let loose to in their off time. They wanted people to come play their army bases and supply music for the clubs downtown in Saigon. And so Robert was in one of these bands, and all the instruments were bought by American tax dollars. Anything they wanted, Fender basses, Gretsch drum kits, whatever, amplifiers. And Robert, and he's very chill and cool, and he was speaking of French, which sounds really cool to me, even though I don't understand like every 10th word. And so he was like saying, bien sûr, like after every statement, of course, like that's a cool way to talk. And so he was like, you know, we would get into helicopters, of course, as if that's a normal way to get to a gig. And, you know, they would be loaded with drums and guitars and amps and prostitutes and piles of drugs, of course. And we'd fly over the jungle, of course, and the VC would be shooting at us, of course. And then we'd land in these clandestine army bases in the middle of the Southeast Asian jungle. We'd play rock and roll and Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and the Rolling Stones for army people just fucked out of their minds on drugs. And the world was on fire, and we played rock and roll, of course. And it was just like the most incredible story I'd ever heard in my life, you know. And the reason I didn't really gel with high school history or English is because I wasn't reading stories or learning tales of people who not necessarily even looked like me, although that would have been great, but people who did what I did, these dirtbag musicians, these artists, right? That's how I get into the history. I don't care what a general does or a president or something, but what music did you dance to? That's what I need to know. So Robert told me, and it opened up this whole world. And this song is about his band and this other Southeast Asian rock band that just is one of my favorites to this day, called the CBC Band. And this is called The Imperial Twist. And now you know the story. Can you give the world a twist just by doing the twist? At the moment the bomb went off, they were playing Purple Haze. I met Robert at his restaurant, c'était un arrondissement. Doors still echo in the jungle. He said your mother brought back 45s from Paris in 65, and we learned them note for note. Some broken English Rolling Stones, Fenders, girls, and dope. America provides. Oh, 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 Saigon teens. Oh, 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 Saigon teens. Can you give the world a twist? Can you save the world with acid rock? I didn't know my mother's maiden name. That time in Texas when we was detained. See, I've been back to old Saigon, but how much of you is lost when they change your name? Oh, 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 Saigon teens. Oh, 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 Saigon teens. Oh, 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 Saigon teens. Oh, oh, Saigon teens. Man, it was half the world away. The band got back on stage for decades to the day. Purple Haze. This is going to be the saddest song that we play tonight. Just saying something. It's called Boat People. First time I ever played this song, or one of the first times I played it, was in Chicago. One of the first tour dates I did for this project. And I said, this next song is called Boat People. And I heard this, woo! I'll tell you why that's inappropriate. The boat people were about 1 million Vietnamese folks who, after the war, left on these little rickety fishing boats. You might have seen similar things in Syria recently, all over the world. And like Syrian folks, many of them were just cast out at sea in these boats made for a crew of 10, 200 people piled in, and turned away by neighboring countries, left to die. And that's what half of these boat people did. Hundreds of thousands of people just dead at the bottom of the South China Sea. Sometimes because, in fleeing in such haste, they piled onto these boats and the ships sank. They were never made for that many people. But a lot of times because ports of refuge or would-be refuge turned them away. And pirates came upon them, or they starved to death. It is tragic. It's horrible. So I have this in mind, delivering this very somber explanation, much like I'm doing now, in this tone of voice, very performative tone of voice. And I hear this, woo! I said, fuck that person. Oh, this is personal. I'm a Vietnamese person. This is personal. So after the show, this woman comes up who's, I guess, a little older than me, probably in her mid-40s, maybe 50. And she says, I'm the boat person. I'm the one who wooed. I was a boat person. I was like, wow, okay, you can woo. You cannot woo. So this is a song, but it's not about 1 million people, because you can't write a good song about 1 million people. You can't just be like, on this day, a lot of bad stuff happened to a lot of people. That's not a good song. You need to find a character. You need to build a world, all this kind of stuff. So like all of these tunes, I dug through the archives. I found this incredible story of this old CBC, Canadian broadcast interview of a refugee, this Dr. Tran, who told this harrowing story, cinematic in nature, just escaping. The communists had come down. They were looking for him to put him in a re-education camp, maybe kill him, like there were many people who lost on that side of the war. And he escapes, and it's an amazing story, and it just kind of poured out. But at the same time, like many of these songs, there's this contemporary layer. I was watching TV on the news and obsessed with my phone when Trump was talking about this Muslim ban thing. And I was thinking, what a thing to ban people. By type, by religion, by color, by whatever. And that's something we've done over and over and over. I was thinking about like all these Syrians in boats I was seeing, and it was just these archival images were just like flickering, literally. I was like going mad watching the TV, seeing this history repeat. So not much has gotten that much better. And so it's still a very sad song. Always will be, but there's worth in the trying, I suppose. So this is called Boat People, for that woo girl in Chicago. 40 years ago, the doctor left on a boat. He'd never seen the snow or felt it in his hand. Sail until you see dry land. I can't get off the news. I can't get off my floor. The good folks go inside when we need you most. What do prayers do behind locked doors? Tuan went back to rebuild, only to watch Saigon fall. Now he climbs a Mont Royal. He makes that life in Montreal. Donated winter coats and Barbie dolls. I've wrapped myself in books. They're talking about this band. I linger on bell hooks house ain't new. No, man. 14 hours by car. Cargo trucks and cabs, just to shake the cups. But Mom had to stay back. A Chinese safe house and covered tracks, 18 meters long, 200 bodies full, a simple compass and a map from a kid's geography book. Forget Ferdinand or Captain fucking Cook. Bodies bobbing in a rough South China Sea. Came across a time pirate ship scavenging. Ripped the doctor from his kids, bleeding. And I was under guns, then tossed into the water. He swam back to his son, held tight to his daughter, drifting through the night. As the daylight broke, a mountain in the dawn, off the Malaysian coast, sweet Pulau Bidong. He never cried so hard or so long. I can't get off the news, I can't get off my phone. My mother came here too. That was 40 years ago. So if you see somebody's cold, you give them a code. Thanks so much. If anyone in the back wants to sit down, there's some seats, a couple seats up here and a seat back here, but all right, this we're gonna bring it up, which is a weird thing to do because the next song is about Japanese internment camps, but at least 500,000 people didn't die. So this project started in Wyoming, of all places. Wyoming, you say? Yes, this is a square state that you've been to in a city called Jackson. But I did not live there. I lived in the cultural capital of the state where the one university is, called Laramie, Wyoming, and it was the best 3 years of my life, saving all the years that I'm married to Amelia. But it was awesome. I was in this indie rock band for most of my 20s, and I got really burnt out the way that you do when you're on tour. I just wanted to do something different, so I was like, I'm gonna I had this so I was kind of like this artsy guy and had no muscles or anything. So I was like, I'm gonna be a man or something. It's total pivot from my beautiful indie rock life. And I'm going to go out west. It's like some Theodore Roosevelt shit or something. And I'm going to climb mountains. And I'm going to read books. I'm going to get smart and I'm going to get strong. That's what I did. And I also like divorced myself from a lot of that very toxic masculinity that informed that decision. But it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So I just roamed on the weekends and just camped out, lived out in my car, and climbed mountains with my friends and just read all these books in grad school and learned about the world in a way that really supplemented the more informal education I'd had as a musician and stuff like that. And it was really, really beautiful. So on these rock climbing trips, my professors would say, oh, you like history and stuff, so check out these historical sites around the state. And there was a couple that impacted me and were the foundation of this project. So one of those is due west on 80 from Laramie is a place called Rock Springs. There's this tiny little historical marker made out of a little plaque on some rocks. And it notes that in 1885, there was this Chinatown, like there were in many cities all around the West and up and down the Americas, well before you can imagine. And but in Rock Springs, this Chinatown was just razed to the ground one day. And 28 miners were murdered in a massacre. I'd never heard about this. And stranger still, kids I knew who I was like TAing for, hanging out with at Wyoming, who grew up in Green River, Rock Springs, did not know about this. Whew. That's a tough one. That's why maybe the academic paper wasn't going to suffice to share this history. So that really hit me. You know, it's like, how could this much history be just swept under the rug? A massacre like that, imagine that happening today, an entire ethnic group being cleansed from a city. So I drove due north after that, climbing some in between, but sights sort of set on this history. Because my professor said there was an old internment camp, a Japanese internment camp, Japanese American incarceration, as us scholars call it, more colloquially, Japanese internment, during the World War II, right? So for those who might not know, 120,000 folks of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of whom were American citizens, were rounded up and put in these 10 concentration camps, all throughout the American West and the Southeast, a state away from I grew up in Tennessee and Arkansas. Never heard about this in high school, not once. And stranger still, kids from Cody and Powell, the towns just outside, stone's throw from this camp called Heart Mountain, did not know about this. And so I spent a lot of time at these places. And I spent a lot of time just rambling around the West and reading books and just sitting on the land and digging through archives and then come up with these stories that would become songs. And this next song, it's a love song. I started the melody out in Wyoming, but all the lyrics are just pulled. It's a piece of fiction. It's just following two teenagers, just falling in love and being dumb about it, probably, as we're wont to do. But it's a setting, right? It's in this place called Heart Mountain that I've spent so much time at, digging through the archives, reading stories about these old Issei, first generation of Japanese folks who had got put in this horrible situation, getting together in the showers and singing these old Japanese songs that are lost to time, only brought over in that sort of immigrant wave, and we don't know them anymore. But just hearing that, like putting sound back into that place and that history. Or these oral histories I collected from people who lived in that camp, talking about digging out a root cellar to put the vegetables in and how they might try to sneak out the barbed wire. These places were not just camps, but they're barbed wire enclosed places with machine guns pointing in and searchlights, real horrible stuff. And so this is just a little folk tune about Heart Mountain. It's called Two Candles in the Dark, kind of taking inspiration from that amazing perseverance by so many of these friends that I made who lived through this. Grandmas and grandpas now, but they were young, and this is about them and living life in a very dark time. Don't it feel like a movie, teaching this girl how to waltz? Left feet she might have 3, but she sure feels nice in my arms. Old folks sing them old songs, playing the agreed upon key. My eyes are stuck on her, her eyes don't leave her feet. Oh, and this girl, no class ring. Maybe this is more than a lark. Brown boots, a dirt floor. We're dancing like two candles in the dark. Pretty outlaw, call a quarter past, like knuckles on a barrack door. She got that brother down in Toho Pass. I saw that name once in a jewelry store. Wind around past the skaters and ponds, just looking for a cut in the wire. She got a key to the cellar door. I don't ask questions, man, just stand there inspired. Oh, and this girl, she gets wild. I miss the garden at the Golden Gate Park. Young blood and old songs, we're dancing like two candles in the dark. Tell you, man, it's like some movie that she just tailor-made for the part. Lamps licking the roof beam. She's got good looking down to an art. Hear the old folks sing them old songs. The background just fades away. Coffee can fire's almost gone. She says, I gotta get out of this place. Oh, but this girl, a pinpoint. It's the moment you feel a spark. Brown boots, a dirt floor. We're dancing like two candles in the dark. We're dancing like two candles in the dark. We're dancing like two candles in the dark. There was a happier one, right? You know, behind barbed wire. You know, so. But that's the thing, you know, when you study these histories, like when I go do like, maybe talk to like 8th graders or high school, God forbid, when I have to do one of those like assemblies, that's the worst, let me just tell you. Try playing earnest folk songs to 500 fucking high schoolers. It's like one of Dante's Rings of Hell. I wish I wasn't so serious about that. But I do it, right? I do it because, you know, like, that was such an eye-opening thing that even kids growing up in the towns where this shit was happening, like, didn't know about it. It's like, how does a social studies teacher get away with that and stay hired? But when it's on that level, you want to make sure you do the sort of, like, somber first degree of learning about that stuff. Total atrocity, violation of constitutional rights. So that could happen in the United States, just piled onto the long line of civil rights injustices and just belligerence that this country has sponsored as a state. You want to get to that. You want to get to the big numbers, 120,000 people behind barbed wire. That's how horrible that is. But as a historian, when you actually do get into it, you talk to individual people. You know, like I was saying about unflattening. Like, my mom never calls herself a refugee. Like, that's a political term that's useful to you on the left, you know, in a way, and it's useful to them on the right. But it's not really useful to us, the people that kind of come from these groups and stuff. And that's what I try to do at this kind of individual level. And again, like these stories of just existing. And also not to get so bogged down in that first level of just trauma, right? It's important to deal with that stuff, whether it actually happens to you, of course, like my mom, or that sort of intergenerational thing that's so in vogue and talked about these days, you know, that I've had to deal with. But you try to move past that, you know, because it's like if something's inherited, you can disavow an inheritance, but you need to deal with it first. You actually have to talk to people about it. There are choices to be made. But this next song, we're staying in Wyoming. We're staying at that Heart Mountain camp, right? And this is really where this project started. I was walking through this museum. It's this tiny little museum. And it's sad. It's telling me all these big numbers and some of the stories, black and white photos, which is really interesting. But like any really sad museum, I'm just kind of floating through it. And I'm feeling sad, and I'll probably feel sad for the rest of the day, but it won't affect the rest of my life. There's one photograph that did, to this day, personally, as a scholar, as an artist. And that was this photo in the middle of the museum that I know people that have been through that museum 4 times, never seen it. It's a photo of a jazz band. All Japanese-American jazz band in rehearsal of the era, big band, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, that kind of stuff. Trombones, saxophones, black and white photo, these slicked back, beautiful Asian hair. White starched shirts, black pants, but again, behind barbed wire. How does this happen? I gotta find out. I went to Berklee College of Music, just up the road, and took probably 4 jazz history classes. Never learned about an Asian American jazz musician. And here was this band whose story that I would unravel would become the centerpiece of my dissertation work. The Georgiagawa Orchestra. This guy George, who was second generation Nisei, Japanese American. He had toured up and down this string of clubs in California, Oregon, Washington, called the Nisei Jazz Circuit. Never heard about this. 20s and 30s, all these Japanese American jazz bands, much like the Chop Suey Circuit, all these Chinese and other Asian jazz musicians would play, East Coast and West Coast. Georgiagawa got put in a detention center. He had just recently even gotten invited to play Japan. Really interesting, because they love jazz over there, because the Filipinos had been sending it all over Asia because the Americans conquered them and all this kind of stuff. It's incredible, rich history that would have been very useful as a young musician who looked like this growing up in Tennessee to know about. It's Georgiagawa Orchestra, man. They get locked up, put into this assembly center in Southern California, because George is an LA guy. It's just outside LA at the fairgrounds. Just locked up, living in horse stalls, stuff like that, before they're sent to these camps that are being built like Heart Mountain. And George, at that assembly center, puts up flyers and puts an ad in the printed newspaper that circulates through camp, says, looking to form a jazz band, right? So these people are told when they're evacuated, when they see these signs on the posts of their neighborhood saying, instructions to all persons of Japanese ancestries, basically, you're out of luck. We're locking you up. We're throwing away the key. Take only what you can carry. That was a refrain. And this is where I got into this history, because I saw these musicians with these instruments, and I thought, these idiots, when they were told to take only what you can carry, these motherfuckers took a saxophone. These are my people. So I researched through the archive as much as I could. What songs did they play? Like I said, a lot of the Glenn Miller, Harry James, Tommy Dorsey, all that good stuff from the 30s and 40s. They put on dances every week. They were so good that they even got invited to go outside the camp to play dances at Elks Lodges or proms in the area. But every night they had to bust back in behind the barbed wire. Sometimes they'd sneak a little contraband whiskey they found back in the barbed wire. I wondered, is anyone still alive, from this band? And there was 2 people. This guy named Yone, who I never got to meet in person, but we had these great phone calls. He lived down in San Francisco. He cracked me up, really humanized these black and white photos of these campers and stuff like that. He unfortunately passed away. But then I met this woman named Joy Teraoka, formerly Joy Takeshita, when she sang for the Georgiagawa Orchestra. And we just developed this incredible relationship, and she became like a grandma to me, right? Like I said at the top of this, my grandma passed away before I could ask her any of the questions I wanted to. Joy kind of stepped in. She would answer, talk for hours on the phone or through emails, and then after I asked basically every question I could possibly think of, she kept emailing me. There was bad weather coming through Providence. Are you okay? I just saw on the Weather Channel, there's like a storm coming through. High-key grandma shit. And that meant so much to me. It was like a connection, not only as a historian, but a person. And so it became really important to write the story of this band into a song and share that with people, right? To get people into this dark history, but through these people who persevered and just exploded joy in these dances, if only for a few hours before they had to go back out in the cold and live in these shitty barracks again. That they would have the invention of learning these songs. George would arrange stock sheet music, just like Glenn Miller Band would play it. They'd sprinkle cream of wheat on the barrack floor so they could slide around and jitterbug. Stuff that, is amazing. The last time the three of us played a barn, it was in Woodstock. It was Levin Helm's old barn, drummer for the band. It was a great gig. And the wife of one of my favorite songwriters, this guy, Carl Newman, who plays for New Pornographers, his wife works there, and she bought a record and brought it home to him. And I saw him the next day on Twitter. He was like, "You got to listen to this song, the best goddamn band in Wyoming. Someone make this into a movie." And someone should. But at least now, my Grandma Joy, Georgie Gow, and the rest of those motherfuckers who brought instruments instead of clothes to an internment camp have a song. So this is the best goddamn band in Wyoming. Flyer red, musicians needed. So young Yoni grabbed a silver mouthpiece, tracked down a kid who brought a trumpet to Pomona. Leone have it on a free 2-year lease. Joy Teraoka, named Takeshita, went to the tryout, she was only 16, with some girlfriends to cheer her on. Their club was called the Rawdells. Mom said, if you keep up with school, Joy, you can sing. Georgie Gawa, Oji Nisei, he toured up the coast, he even played Japan. Before the war, they ripped up the Florida ballroom, and don't sleep on those Shotokians.
Under starlight, they dance behind barbed wire.
Under the mountain, it meant something to sing. Stuck between two countries in a fire, the best goddamn band in Wyoming. Little Ted's best show repped the Cardiacs gang, the clarinet kid, the Nisei Hardy Shaw. Stopped by rehearsal in a tar paper barrack. Once he joined up, sister, it was on. They practiced daily, gigged on the weekends, stirring up those dusty mess halls. Teenage bodies unchained from their parents. Man, them old folks, they really lost it all. Beyond this swing band left in Wyoming, that got them out some nights until dawn. Warbond drives and pal moments dancing in Lovell. Bunch of Japs playing jazz at the Thermopolis prom. Under machine guns they dance behind barbed wire. At Below Zero it meant something to sing. Angelinos mixing up with farm kids in a choir. The best goddamn band in Wyoming. So Georgie Gawa, he split for Chicago with Kamiko in the fall of 44. He left the band to Ted's. Joy went with her family to D.C. As for Yoni, he had to join the war. And that's a story from Old Hot Mountain, and the best band you never did see. Locked up in prison camps for no fucking reason, but they still found a